After falling to the Buffalo Sabres, the Arizona Coyotes have a chance at another bottom feeding team. I'm going to talk about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. I'm your host, Carl Pavlock. Before we get started, I do want to thank everyone for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. So if you want, you can see my very dark apartment office, which is where I'm recording right now. It's the night before today's game. Let's get talking about it. So, Arizona Coyotes had a big chance to extend their home win streak this past Saturday against my hometown team, the Buffalo Sabres, and things did not go out well for them, to put it mildly. The Arizona Coyotes looked good to start off. They got their first goal of the game early on, a power play goal from Shane Gostisbehere, but that was quickly followed with a penalty and a Buffalo goal. Both teams traded penalties in the first period. Second period, started off with a nice one. Barrett Hayton, just a phenomenal individual effort to force a turnover in the neutral zone, taking in a breakaway. But not long after that, there was another Buffalo Sabres goal. Finally, third period, when you really want the Coyotes to come out strong, midway through that period, they give up another penalty. Tage Thompson scores on the power play, and that's all she wrote for the Coyotes. Buffalo would get another 2 goals in a 5-2 rout of the Coyotes. Just absolutely brutal to see. You do not like to lose games like that. I know there are plenty of people who are all in on the tank, and I can appreciate that. This is my third rebuild, as I've said before. So I can appreciate just wanting to get the best result. But there's something that's just disheartening if you're a member of the team and you're losing because of penalties, because of stupid penalties, because you're losing to the Buffalo Sabres. Just in general, it's not fun. And it's not something that anyone wants to deal with. So even though the results are probably helpful for lottery and all that kind of fun stuff, not exactly the results that the Coyotes wanted. And it's frustrating that these have been kind of the consistent problems with the Coyotes. I'm sure if you've listened to us before, you have heard me and Robin and I discuss the Coyotes' just habit of taking poorly timed penalties and far too many penalties. And that was absolutely the case against the Buffalo Sabres, and something that, I hope that they straighten out. The Coyotes are going to lose plenty of games. They don't need to lose games because they took a poor penalty immediately after a goal. One, like I said, not great for anyone's mental state. There are plenty of things that the Coyotes are going to do to lose games. They don't need to throw on that extra. And two, it's building poor habits. It's not like the veterans are the only ones taking the penalties. Jan Unique played against the Sabres. I believe he had 2 penalties in the game. I cannot remember if they contributed to goals, but either way, you don't want Unique taking too many penalties. He's going to take them. He's that type of player, that physical type of player, and they tend to get called for penalties, but you don't want him to take unnecessary ones. You don't want him to go to the box thinking, this is on me. This loss of momentum, this loss in general is on me. So that's definitely, just a habit that the Coyotes are let's be honest, not going to break anytime soon. I would love it to happen. I would give the world to see the Coyotes not be one of the most penalized teams in the NHL. I would love to see them not take the stupidest penalties imaginable. I'd love to see fewer too many men in the ice penalties, but a lot of it is just outside of their hands. Like if they're not playing to the level that they need to play, they're going to take a dumb penalty. It's just kind of what happens. And there's not really too much you could do about that. But there were definitely some bright spots. Like I mentioned, the power play goal from Shane Gostisbehere. Love to see that. Coyotes convert on 20% of their power plays at this point in the season, which is not good. It's definite improvement from last season, but it's a big step down from earlier this season, which you really don't understand how the Coyotes could add Jacob Chychrun and Nick Schmaltz, and their power play seems to get worse. I will never understand that. Also, it was phenomenal to see Barrett Hayton get rewarded. I really like Barrett Hayton. We haven't had too much to talk about, reason to bring him up this season, but I do think that he is playing his defensive end of the game very well. He is not a player that I'm worried about, even though he is not really showing up on the score sheets as much. Like I have a feeling that if you threw him with Matthias Michelli and Lawson Cross for a game, he would probably get be more offensive. If you put him with Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz for a full couple games, like he would get that. But he's playing the game the right way, and you love to see him get rewarded. I do kind of hope that he continues to find his offense, continues to find his place in the NHL. But I'm going to talk about this a little bit more. But real quick, we do have a word from our sponsor. And that sponsor is AG1. Our next product, our next partner, has a product that I use literally every day. I started AG1 because I just do not have the time in the morning. I work from home. What I like to do is just kind of roll out of bed and immediately start working. And I don't like to take a lot of time to prep. I like to just be ready. And so that's why I have been loving the AG1 drinks. You can just go downstairs, get some water, pour it in there, perfectly good. And it costs you less than $3 a day. If you're investing in your health, that's really great. I'm always trying to eat healthier, and it is definitely one of those things where cost gets in the way. It is unfortunately cheaper a lot of times to get something that's not as healthy, but that's where AG1 has you covered. And right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with a convenient daily nutrition. Just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. There's no need for a million different pills or supplements to take to look out for your health. And to make it easier, Athletic Greens is giving you 1 free year supply of the immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And we're back. Carl Pavlock, Locked On Coyotes. Just me for today's episode. Unfortunately, as we go into the Christmas time of year, scheduling gets a lot harder. And my family is mostly in Arizona, leaves me with a lot of open time. So I'm going to talk to you about this game. And I kind of want to talk about where things are compared to the first time that the Coyotes played the Montreal Canadiens, because it has been an interesting story. The Coyotes played Montreal, their 4th game of the year. They had just finished beating the Toronto Maple Leafs. Chef's kiss. Love that game. Love the Coyotes just taking it to Toronto. But Montreal had a bit of hope going into it. They have Slafkovsky, phenomenal first overall pick. They seem to have taken some of the steps that they needed to. People thought that the Montreal Canadiens were going to be, not contenders. No one thought that they were going to go from being the worst team in the NHL to suddenly being Stanley Cup people, even though they went from Stanley Cup contenders to the worst team in the NHL. But most people thought they'd be okay, some improvement. They've gotten better. They're not going to finish as bad. Last season, a lot of people blamed like serious injuries, which yes, the Montreal Canadiens absolutely had to deal with some serious injuries last season. Hopefully that would be less of a concern. But here we are. Montreal is again dealing with some injuries, and they are not doing great. They are not one of the worst teams in the NHL. That is actually a pretty significant bar right now. They are the worst team in the Atlantic. They are tied with the Ottawa Senators for 30 points. The Buffalo Sabres, just as a comparison, have 32. As do the Detroit Red Wings. It's definitely, you see a major drop off in the Atlantic. But, looking at how bad things could be, 30 points in 31 games for Montreal. Always important to include the games. The Columbus Blue Jackets have 22 points in 30 games. 8 fewer points in 1 fewer game. That's not good. Chicago Blackhawks, 18 points in 29. And also at that low end, the Anaheim Ducks, 21 points, 32 games. So there's definitely worse teams than the Montreal Canadiens. One of those teams, the Arizona Coyotes, 24 points in 29 games. So they're not the absolute dumpster fire that a lot of teams are, and they're not really bad like the Coyotes are, but they're not good either, which is like a real unfortunate place to be if you're the Canadiens, if we're being honest, because like think about it, if you finish outside the top 5, if you finish say 6th, like that's not a great pick, and it's not like you took a major step forward. That's still disappointing. So I do kind of wonder. There's always the chance that Montreal is going to be major sellers at the trade deadline, which who knows what that's going to do, potentially drop them off. The Montreal Canadiens come into today's game with a 3-game losing streak, which not good. They last played Saturday. I've noticed the Coyotes' opponents tend to have the same amount of rest as they do. There's not a lot of uneven matchups. At least just kind of my initial standings. I haven't looked into it too much, but that seems to be the case. Montreal lost 5-1 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now I know what you're saying. Tampa Bay Lightning, they're a good team. Should not be too surprised at that. And I'm not. I do not think there is any shame in the Montreal Canadiens losing 5-1 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Just a really good team. Not as good as they were a couple years ago, but still phenomenal team. But the other 2 games that the Montreal Canadiens have lost, 5-2 to the Anaheim Ducks and 3-2 to the Ottawa Senators. Those are not the teams that you want to be losing to. Like I said, Montreal and Ottawa, they're on the same level in the Atlantic, but the Ducks, they're just bottom of the barrel. Honestly, Coyotes fans should be thanking the Canadiens for losing to the Ducks, because you definitely want the Ducks to get more points. And it feels like they should. I don't understand how the Ducks are this bad. It's tough to say. But that's not great. That is not a good showing for Montreal. Before that, they beat the Calgary Flames in overtime. Good for them. Calgary is a team. They are better than the Senators and the Ducks, I'll say that. But they've also lost this season this month to the LA Kings, the Edmonton Oilers, and the Vancouver Canucks. That is just losing to the Canucks. Not good. Surprisingly enough, they do have a 2-1 victory over Calgary to start the month, and a 4-2 win over the Seattle Kraken, who are doing pretty good right now. So definitely not something where it's absolutely horrible, but I'm sure that no one in Montreal is happy with how they've been playing this month or this season in general. It's definitely, there seems to be less hope than when they were beating the Coyotes, which is understandable. Things have gotten bad for them. It's going to cause you to lose hope. But I'm going to talk about this upcoming game a little bit more. To our final section, talk about anyone who may be betting, what you could maybe do for that. But first, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen every day. And I want to make sure that you check out Locked On Sports Today. It's the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports Today is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And we're back. Carl Pavlock for this final segment of today. As I said, it's just going to be me for today. Later this week, I have a fun interview coming up. We're going to be talking some Atlanta Gladiators hockey, some Liam Kirk. So definitely make sure to subscribe and be on the lookout for that episode today. Or not today, later this week. Sorry. And yeah, we got to talk about today's game. It's a little bit early, so I do not have the odds. Even though Montreal's not a good team, they're still better than the Coyotes. So they're going to be the favorites. Coyotes are always the underdogs. It's just what they do. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to say 6.5 goals. Because why not? And again, betting, I always like to use this as just an idea to predict the score. Last time I predicted something, it was the New York Islanders, and I was completely wrong. I thought that the Islanders were going to easily beat the Coyotes. But then again, I thought that the Coyotes would have a better matchup against the Sabres. Wrong on both counts. So a little bit hesitant for this one. But I think it's going to be closer. I think that these teams, they're gonna stick to each other. They're not going to be a blowout game. I do think that it is going to be a fair amount of goals. Like I said, Montreal has given up 5 goals to the Anaheim Ducks. Coyotes don't have the offense of the Ducks, but definitely kind of an interesting place to put that. I'm going to go with 4-2 Coyotes. I think the Coyotes have this one. This is going to be Montreal's first time in Mullet Arena. It's definitely a different experience. And I don't necessarily think that the Canadiens are the type of team that's going to give the Coyotes their all. Maybe that's just because I am so used to Montreal Canadiens fans underestimating the Coyotes organization, Coyotes fan base, just all of that. And I am assuming that the team is going to as well. I am not sure. It's definitely a possibility. But the Coyotes are definitely a team that can catch you off guard. And there is nothing that says that the Montreal Canadiens can't be caught off guard. Like I said, losses to the Ducks and the Senators are definitely signs like, hey, maybe they're not able to play down to their competition. That 7-6 overtime loss to the Vancouver Canucks. Not exactly a great one. But yeah, that kind of paints the picture of me of a team that's maybe not ready to face the bottom teams. Also, like I said, first time in one arena, that can definitely, surprise you. So I think the Coyotes are going to have the advantage for this one. Also, can't forget to mention that the fact that the Canadiens beat the Coyotes to start the season, like that feels like a lifetime ago. But if you like handily beat a team 2 months ago, are you gonna prepare? Are you gonna give it your 100% the next time, or you think you're gonna cut corners a bit? Good teams, great teams, they're not gonna cut corners a bit. The Montreal Canadiens are not a great team. They're a bad team that could potentially play up. I do not know how to describe the Montreal Canadiens. It's been a weird season. But they're not as bad as the Coyotes, but they, like I said, bottom of the standing. So I am not gonna give them the credit of good team or average team. They are not. They do have an average penalty kill, so that could definitely be a concern for the Coyotes, whose power play is not great. I do not believe they have a great power play. So good for the Coyotes if that is something that they don't need to worry about. Just checking real quick. Yeah, Montreal Canadiens have the worst power play in the NHL, converting 14% of the time. So yeah, I think the Coyotes have this one, and I think it's going to be a 4-2 win. I think Vejmelka gets the start tonight. Ingram did not deserve that loss against the Sabres. He got really hung out to dry with the lack of offense. I thought he played fine. Just dumb penalties killed that game. But gonna go with Vejmelka for the start. That's what I'm predicting, provided no one's hurt. Knock on wood. And for the game-winning goal, we're gonna go Barry Hayton again. Why not? Like I said, like we did, maybe that goal is going to trigger something in him. So 4-2 with a Barrett Hayton winner, and let's say an empty netter, because you always like to give an empty net. And that's where I'm at for this one. Let's see how close I am. I am always nervous when I do the solo episodes and I do these predictions, because I wrote the preview for this game on 5 for Howling before, so I have a feeling I know the game. I don't like to do predictions in those previews. I like to just kind of describe what's going on, but without having someone to like bounce off of to challenge my assumptions, I feel like there's always could be more. So take what I'm saying, just as half of it. But let me know what you think. Do you think that the Coyotes can pull this one off? Do you think they can avoid getting swept by the Montreal Canadiens? Let us know. I do want to thank everyone for making Locked On Coyotes your first listen. Like I said, you can check out Locked On Sports Today for your second listen, where you are going to get the biggest stories from around the sports world in 20 minutes. It's great analysis and opinions before anyone else, with our local and national experts and insiders. Locked On Sports Today is available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. In the meantime, remember to like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Like I said, later this week, we are going to have an episode talking about the Atlanta Gladiators. They just had some amazing Thrasher jerseys. You're going to want to check that episode out. So make sure you're subscribed. Follow the podcast on Twitter at @LO_Coyotes. Like I said, I wrote about this game. By the time you're listening to this, it is up on 5 for Howling. You could check that out. You could also follow that. The word 5, the number 4, word Howling. That's the main place to get any of my hockey opinions right now. It's where my Twitter activity is concentrated. But I do want to thank everyone for listening to today, listening to me ramble on a solo episode. Hope you're staying safe out there. Hope you're doing well. Hope you enjoyed tonight's game. And don't forget to howl on.